Hello guys and gals, and welcome to Bullshit Creepypasta Storytime, where I read stories that may or may not be bullshit, but most certainly are bullshit, or I read bullshit that may or may not even be a story. Today's story is going to be Nick Burned. Scary. Now, let me just preface this by saying that I'm not going to make up any of the shit that I'm about to read from this story. It's a roller coaster. You'll be in for a treat. Okay, Silva Gunner fans, I need your help with this. You're asking the wrong type of people. Go to 4chan. This is not a meme. This is a long rip, whatever that means. But I feel like my safety or well-being could very well depend on this. I'm sure it doesn't, but go on. This is video game related, no really, specifically Majora's Mask, and the most uncanny shit that has ever happened to me in my entire life. Somebody saw the game over screen once and shit their pants. Having said that, I recently moved into my dorm room, starting as a theater arts major in college, and a friend of mine gave me his old Nintendo 64 to play. How coincidental! It was grand, to say the least. I'm sure it was. What grand controller doesn't have 3 handles? I could finally play all of those high-quality video games of my youth that are high quality that I haven't touched in at least a decade. They're so high quality, I didn't even touch them. His Nintendo 64 came with one blue controller and a rather shoddy copy of Donkey Kong 64, that eternal classic. When while beggars can't be choosers, needless to say, it didn't take long until I became tired of hearing the DK rap. That's how you know he's not a true gamer. That weekend, I decided to drive around shops about 7 minutes or so off campus. Oh, you trooper. Hoping to score on some special deals at places like H.H. Gregg. You know, that one place that you can go to get video games besides GameStop and Creepypasta Land. I ended up picking up a copy of Superman 64, Super Mario 64, and, in parentheses, fuck yeah, Gex 64, and 2 blunts. Very important detail and very high quality games you got there, bro. Satisfied with my great taste in games, you keep telling yourself that, author, I began to drive out of the area when one man with his own little stand in an alleyway caught my attention. I still have no idea why I stopped by. Me neither, and I'm the one reading the story. There was no one in sight, except for the one man that you just mentioned, and only one table was set up with ice cream. But something sort of drew me there. It was called bad writing. I usually trust my vibe on these things. Oh, that's not vague at all. So I got out of the car, and I was greeted by a middle-aged man, different from the man that I just mentioned. His outward appearance was, for lack of a better word, uncanny. He looked like a villain, and that's all you're getting. I mean, if you asked me to tell you why I thought he did what, I wouldn't be sure. Yet, he also looked scarily familiar. All I can tell you is that if it wasn't in the middle of the afternoon and there wasn't delicious-looking ice cream and this wasn't a creepypasta, I would not have even thought of approaching this man. Mr. Author, only making the greatest decisions. It wouldn't be a creepypasta without great decision-making. He flashed a crooked smile at me and asked, "What could I do for you, you incredibly handsome person?" That's how you know the story's fake. Someone called this guy handsome. Clearly, the old man was talking about someone else. Me. Immediately, I noticed that he must have a fake mustache. A very specific detail that I'm surprised you caught, Mr. Author. It looked like it was about to fall off. I forced myself to look to his eyes instead, trying not to offend, despite having written about him in this shitty story, and asked loudly, "Can I have some video games? Please, with 4 A's and 3 A's? 4 E's, 3 A's? Now, wondering how I could politely excuse myself from this awkward situation after that sounded oddly rude. Not sounded, was oddly rude. Expecting he would tell me he had no games, to my surprise, he had a few ones in the back. The back of his stand? How big is his stand? He assured me, saying, "Okay, coming right up," and turned around and mysteriously ducked under his big stand. As I watched him disappear, I couldn't help but notice the cat is currently in my lap. I couldn't help but notice what he had in the back of the stand. Scattered across were rather ... space, low-quality games. Various bootlegs that looked like things you'd find on obscure ROM sites or that one obscure gaming series by Yuri of Wind. Curious, I looked through them, finding games such as Felix the Cat or Super Mario World 64. It was obvious why no one was visiting this guy's stand. It was all one big bootleg. Even the ice cream looked fake. Oh, that's the deal breaker right there, Mr. Author. As I came to the last one of ice cream, it was very faded and burnt. I'm gonna assume you're still talking about the ice cream. For some reason, it looked almost like a fleshy Majora's Mask. The same heart-shaped body with little spikes protruding outward. Outward of what? Now with some resemblance of a face. The faces of evil, you could say, in certain circles of the internet. Initially, I just thought it was some weird meme, which it definitely was, but given the unbearable weight of events that happened afterward, I'm not so sure now, period. It definitely was a big meme. You're probably smoking too many blunts. After staring at the Majora-shaped face, I looked up and the man was suddenly there again, tall and skinny, towering above me, creepily smiling at me, creepily, as if he was saying, "You don't say," in all caps, question mark, exclamation point. I'll admit, I jumped, as if I just got beamed and riced, and I looked in awe as he handed me the Nintendo 64 cartridge. "I believe you were looking at this, question mark," he said. It was the standard gray color, the standard gray color, not the special edition gray color, except that someone had written "Cage" on the back in all caps. I had so many questions. Why does it have that? Who is that face on the front? How did it get burned? I got bees in my stomach. I know how that feels, buddy. As curiosity flowed through my veins because I'm a bad creepypasta main character, and asked him how much he wanted it. Wanted what? The man smiled at me and told me, "Nothing, it's for free," and that it used to belong to an actor that didn't live here anymore. There was something weird about how the man phrased that. How? But fuck that, I gasped and said, "Free?" Question mark, exclamation point, out of excitement, most likely startling the man with my weird excitement over broken cartridges. I reminded myself to be a bit skeptical, since this looked like a pretty damaged cartridge, and there's a good chance it wouldn't work. But then the Ripper inside me interjected that maybe it was some kind of beta mix or alpha mix of the game, and that was all I needed to be back on the grind of asking old people about their broken, damaged cartridges. I thanked the man, and the man smiled at me for remembering his name, for his name is just the man. You learn that from the encyclopedia that you get with pre-orders of the story. When all of a sudden, his mustache fell off. Oh no! Before I could recognize who he may have been, he turned around and ran off quickly, saying, "Goodbye, prick!" At least that's what it sounded like to me, Mr. Author, not sure what he even sang anymore. All the way in the car ride home, I had a strange doubt that the man could have said something else, which is very, very possible, even though it seemed intentional. What? My fears were confirmed when I booted up the game, in my car apparently. ... To my horror, instead of the normal Majora's Mask, it had a creepy, smiling face textured onto it. To top it all off, there was one save file named simply Nick, in all caps. "Goodbye, Nick," he was saying. "Goodbye, Nick." Yes, please clarify that. I didn't hear you the first time, Mr. Author. I felt so stupid because you are. It's all so clear now, is it really? The cage written on the back, the face I saw, the name Nick. This was none other than the famous actor, Nicolas Cage. Did he himself own this? Was this some sort of meme ROM hack? Yes, it was, because the alternative sounds pretty vain. Vain enough to make me think that you're probably Tom. After being in complete shock, I looked at the save file. I, witnessing it, could tell that he was pretty far in the game, dash. He had almost all of the masks, or in this case, faces, in quotes, and 3/4 remains of the bosses. I noticed that he had used a Truffle Pig statue to save the game. He was on day 3, and by the Stone Cage Temple, with hardly an hour left before the moon struck. I could only imagine the horror of how the moon would look with his face. Nicolas Cage's face on the moon. Truly terrifying stuff. Honestly, I was glad he didn't finish the game. This man certainly would have gone insane going any further in this weird mod or ROM hack or bootleg or made-up imagination of your high-ass mind. I'm assuming that's what this is at least. I made a new file using my name, John. We now know your name, author. Your name is John. You're on the list. Began smoking one of my blunts and started the game, ready to have the trip of my life. For such a weird N64 hack, I was impressed at how smoothly it ran. Literally just like an unmodded copy of the game, save for a few minor fuck-ups here and there, so it wasn't like an unmodded copy of the game. Okay, parentheses, like the textures being Nicolas Cage, lowercase, random flashes of his face, but nothing game-breaking, which is why I decided to mention them. However, at times the NPCs would call me Nick, and at other times they would call me John. I figured it was just a glitch in the programming because I'm terrible, causing the game files to get misfiled. Though how is that even possible? It's all alphabetical. What, the files or the what? Thinking about how the game thought we might be the same person didn't feel right. And it was around after I had beaten the Elijah Wood Temple, my favorite temple in the game, the Elijah Wood Temple, that I regrettably went into the save files and deleted Nick with all my regret, hoping that that would solve the problem. It didn't, now NPCs would call me this strange name, Troy. Ooh, scary. Yet my save file name was still called John. Frustrated and with high quality rips of your blunt to work on, I put the game down for a day. You trooper. I started playing the ROM hack again last night, you brave author, getting the Declaration of Independence, my favorite item in the game, and working my way towards completing the Great Cage Temple, whatever that place is. Now, if you are a no-life nerd and serve zero purpose, like me, the author, you probably know about the 0.5 presses glitch, which I don't, so please explain for us, Mr. Author, unless you don't want to. For those who don't, I don't give a fuck about any of you. Oh, you're a great main character. Because every time I post a half A-press video, I get the same comments over and over again, asking what it means, even though I always have a whole paragraph in the description explaining it. Where the fuck are you going with this? Which even starts with, if you're wondering what a half A-press is in quotes, read this before commenting to ask. Regardless, that's besides the point, which is why I went on a big rant that meant nothing. Deciding to do the glitch to try and finish the Great Cage Temple, I happened to get it right on the first try because I'm awesome, and the time counter at the bottom disappeared. However, when I attempted to do the glitch again, why would you do it again, I found myself in the Majora boss fight room at the end of the normal game, staring at Skull Cage hovering above me, my favorite character. There was no sound, just him floating in the air above me, and the background music, which was completely covered by Cage screaming. I thought you said there was no sound. Quit lying to me, author. Immediately, my palms began to get sweaty. Dash, my knees were weak, my arms were heavy. In the unmodded game, Skull Kid never appeared here. I tried moving around the area, and no matter where I went, Skull Cage, that's his name now again, would always be facing me, smiling at me, not saying anything, like normal. I was waiting for something to happen. You would think it would take just 60 seconds. No, it took 4 hours in all caps. Stopwatch is out also with an exclamation point. I thought the game had soft locked, but I was beginning to doubt that very much, which means that it probably did soft lock. I was about to reach for the reset button when text appeared on my screen, in quotes. The snowflakes are perfect. The stars are perfect. Not us. Not us, exclamation point. We are here to ruin ourselves and to break our hearts and love the wrong people and die, end of quotes. I instantly recognized that text. It was from the movie Moonstruck. I refuse to be entertained by a movie starring Nicolas Cage. What is with you in hating Nicolas Cage? I began looking for things in my inventory that could help trigger some sort of event. I started to think that this was all a part of the hack. No, really? Then I realized how high I was. To even think that someone could reprogram the game like this. That thought of mine was absurd. Not really, but go on. Sure enough, 7 seconds later, stopwatch is out, I got taken out of my inventory menu, and another message appeared on the screen. And again, like the first one, it was from a Nicolas Cage quote, not a movie, a quote, a Nicolas Cage quote. What's in the bag, question mark? A shark or something, question mark? Yes? No. I paused for a second, thinking about the question. What's there to think about? At first I thought, obviously not, but I did have Georg's remains. Would that, in some twisted logic, count? Taking a deep breath, I pressed yes. He then said for a brief few moments, what do you say we cut that chit-chat, a-hole, question mark? Then, screen faded to white. Nice grammar. With the words, dawn of a new day, with the subtext, a whole bunch of lines. Beneath it, where I was ported to made me go from originally Uncanny Phase 2 to Uncanny Phase 8. What about Uncanny Phase 1, author? The only way I could describe the way I felt here is that it felt sus on a profound scale. You know shit's sus when it's on a profound scale. I am normally not a cringe person. You're not really proving that with this story, but okay. But the way I felt here was a feeling that I didn't even know existed. That was the only word I could describe how it truly felt. I appeared in some kind of broken version of Clocktown. I walked out of the clock tower, only to find that all of the Nicolas Cage textures were gone. At first, I cheered, hallelujah, I'm not making that up. However, right after is when I realized all the inhabitants' faces were gone. I thought it was just a mod breaking at this point. It's almost like it's a damaged cartridge. But when I went to talk to an NPC, they all, in the blink of an eye, disappeared at once. This time, they were all gone, implying that people have disappeared before this point. What replaced them was the ominous feeling that Nick was still out there, in the same area as me, and that he was watching me. I had 4 hearts to my name, and the hero's bow. But at this point, I don't think the game wants in-game John. Being vain again, John. I felt a strange feeling that it wanted me, and that I was in danger. Perhaps the most freaky thing was the music. It was the song of healing, high quality ripped straight from the game itself, but with Nicolas Cage screaming, being played in reverse, the scariest thing known to man. The music would get louder, building up so as if you should expect a bean and rice. But it never happened, and the constant loop began to give me blue balls, implying that you had any balls before this story started, John. Every now and then, I would hear the faint manic laugh of Nicolas Cage, you know the laugh, the manic laugh, in the background. Just quiet enough so that I wasn't sure if I was just high as fuck, but just loud enough to keep me thinking I'm not tripping, which you definitely are, author John. I looked in all 4 zones of Clocktown, only to find some iguanas. ... Wait, what are fucking iguanas doing in my game, question mark? I went back to check, and they weren't there anymore. No one was, in fact. Textures were missing. West Clocktown had me walking on Con Air, and the entire hack felt like it was falling apart, as a song of healing with Cage repeated for what must have been the 70th time. I was counting the whole time. I just remember standing in the middle of South Clocktown, realizing that I had never felt so stoned playing a video game before, which makes you sound incredibly lame. As I walked through the faceless town, I don't know whether it was the combination of the faceless textures and the horrific, possibly faceless melody of the once peaceful and soothing song being butchered by Nicolas Cage samples, but I was literally on the verge of hysterical laughter, overreaction, and I don't know why. I hardly ever laugh. You sound fun at parties. The only times I do are when I hear the Flintstones theme. Oh wow, you sound really fun at parties. I don't know if it was genuine or if I am truly going insane. What would make you think that? Nothing has happened. I tried leaving Clocktown, but every time I did, a swarm of bees killed me instantly. I tried playing my ocarina. I wanted to escape this metaphorical cage I was stuck in. I did not, in all caps, want to be here. Neither do I. But every time I played the Song of Time or Song of Soaring, it would only say, "It doesn't matter how far you run," in quotes. There are some demons you just can't escape, end quotes. By this point, it was obvious Nick didn't want me to leave, but I had no idea why he was keeping me here. I didn't want to go inside the buildings. I felt that I would be too vulnerable there to whatever I was terrified of. I don't know why, but I came up with the idea that maybe if I burned myself in the fireplace at the inn, I could spawn somewhere else and leave this place. Please take me with you. I don't want to be here either. As I zoned in and ran towards the fireplace, that's when it happened. John grabbed his head, and the screen flashed for a brief moment of the Happy Mask salesman with Nick's face smiling at me. Not the John in the game, me, with him screaming in agony, playing in the background. When the screen returned, I was staring at what would usually be the Link statue from playing the song Elegy of Emptiness, but now, with Nick's creepy face, oh, I bet it was, I screamed, "My eyes!" exclamation point, as he just stared back at me through my soul with those haunting snake eyes. His eyes became dice. I turned around and got the fuck out ASAP. All the cage textures were now back, and to my horror, the fucking statue followed me, and the only way I can compare this is like the endoskeleton from the Joy of Creation or Security Bridge. What the fuck are you talking about? And then in parentheses, you know, one of those Willy's Wonderland clones. No, I don't, author. Every 7 seconds or so, the animation would play of the statue appearing behind me. It was like he was chasing me, or, I don't even want to fucking say it. You know he's serious when he's saying he fucking doesn't want to. Caging me. By this point, I was on the verge of hysterics, oh you girl, saying things that made no sense, like that I was a vampire, or a prickly pear. I must have been high out of my mind. Though looking back, maybe that was just my brain's way of a coping mechanism. Maybe it was, author, but I'm not sure. Oddly enough, not even once did the thought of turning off the console occur to me, because I'm a bad creepypasta main character. I don't know why. I was so caged up in it. Please stop with the puns. It felt so humorous. I don't quite find it humorous like you do, Mr. John, but go ahead and call it that. But at the exact same time, I felt terror. I tried to tell the statue to get the fuck out of my way, a very foolproof strategy, but it would literally appear right behind me every single time. John started to make weird animations that looked straight out of a movie. He would flail his arms around or dance around, and the screen would cut to the Happy Mask salesman. Or should I say, quotes, Happy Face salesman. I don't really think you could say that. That sounds really fucking lame. Smiling again for a brief moment before I was face to face with that Nick statue again. I ended up running into the Wicker Man's dojo and ran to the back. I don't know why, but in my panic, I just would have rather got killed by bees than that thing. That statue that cannot hurt you whatsoever. To my dismay, there weren't any bees, though I swear for a moment there was an iguana in parentheses. But as I turned to leave, Nick caged me in the cubby on the back. I tried attacking him with my sword, but he just kept his usual stupid smile. Stupid. Confused and backed into a corner, I just stared at it and said, "Well, I think you better pull the trigger, because I don't give a fuck," anticipating for it to kill me. Suddenly, the screen flashed again to the Happy Face salesman, and John turned to face my screen, standing upright, mirroring Nick, both looking at me with that stupid grin. Literally staring at me, the author, because I'm special. The fourth wall began to break, as if I was in some sort of film. You're in a story. Suddenly, the game warped me to an underground tunnel, and the reverse song of caging queued up again, as I was given a brief moment of rest before the statue started appearing behind me again. ... This time, aggressively. Aggressive teleportation. I could only take a few steps before it would summon behind me again. I hurriedly made my way out of the tunnel and appeared in southern Cage Town. As I ran aimlessly in a sheer panic, suddenly he screamed, and the screen faded to black as Dawn of a New Day and a whole bunch of lines appeared again. The screen faded in, and I was standing on top of Cage Tower with Skull Cage once again hovering over me again, completely silent again, that bastard. I looked up to the terrifying sight of the moon with his giant face. Whose giant face? We'll never know. Looming just meters above my head, but the Skull Cage just stared at me hauntingly. A new song was playing. The Stone Tower Temple theme covered by pitch-shifted samples played in reverse. In some sort of desperate attempt, I equipped my bow and fired off a shot at the Skull Cage. And it actually hit him, and he sounded in pain. I decided to keep shooting. I could feel that his soul was still there. The soul of Nicolas Cage. I then started to nervously laugh. I fired again, and on the third arrow, a text box appeared, saying, "Killing me won't bring back your goddamn honey." And I was picked up off the ground, levitated towards on my back, and then John screamed as he burst into flames, instantly killing him. You're really bad at the game. I jumped when this happened. "How did he get burned?" In all caps, I screamed out loud. As the death screen played, my lifeless body still burning. Nicolas Cage laughed, and the screen faded to black, only to have me reappear in the same place. I decided to charge him, which sounded like a really good idea, but the same thing happened. John's body was lifted off the ground by some unknown force, and he immediately burst into flames again, killing him. The author is now going insane. This time during the death screen, the faint sounds of the reverse "Not the Bees" could be heard. On my third, in parentheses, and final try, I noticed that there was no butchered, pitch-shifted music playing this time. That all there was awkward silence. Even the music got tired of you. I remembered that in the original game, with your first encounter with Skull Kid, you were supposed to use the Ocarina to either travel back in time or summon the giants. Yes, I remember. I attempted to play the Song of Time, but before I could hit the last note, John's body once again horrifically burned. As the death screen neared its end, it began to buzz, as if the cartridge was filled with loads of bees. When the screen came to, it was the same setting as the first 3 times, except this time, John, with Cage's horrific face texture, was lying on the ground, staring at me, his head tilted towards the camera, with the Skull Cage floating above him. I couldn't move, I couldn't press any buttons, and I definitely couldn't shut the game off. All I could do was just stare at John's lifeless husk of a body. After around 30 seconds of this, the game simply fades out, with the message, "You've met with a terrible face, haven't you?" before kicking you out to the title screen. Upon getting back to the title screen and starting again, I noticed my save file was no longer there. Instead of John, it was replaced with "Too Late" in all caps. Too Late had 3 hearts, 0 masks, and no items. Well, Too Late sucks at this game. I selected Too Late, and immediately when I did, I was returned to the Cage Tower rooftop scene of my in-game John dead and the Skull Cage hovering over, with Nicolas Cage maniacally laughing over and over again, with him also saying "Too Late" in the background. I quickly hit the reset button, finally, and when the game booted up again, there was one more save file added. Below Too Late, entitled Nick. Nick's save file is right back where it was before I deleted it. It was like he never was gone in the first place. I turned the game off at that point. I began to feel something was wrong with me. I didn't even get any sleep last night. I kept hearing Nicolas Cage quotes in my head and just remembering the sense of dread I felt seeing his awful face. I couldn't handle it anymore, and I went on a rampage. I was throwing stuff out of fear and rage, but that was when I broke the mirror. I looked in the mirror, and I saw him. He was me. My face, ... was his ... I put my hand towards the mirror and immediately cut it accidentally on the broken mirror. And when it touched, I felt a huge burn. That was when I fainted. Oh, you girl. The next morning, I looked in the mirror and my face was back. I was beyond relieved, but then I questioned everything that happened the day before. Was that all real? Or was it all just a trip from the fat blunt I smoked? Yes, it was, author. I drove back to the alleyway today to ask the man some questions with a buddy of mine named Jerry. And, in parentheses, Jerry can kick some absolute ass, by the way. Only to find that the stand was gone. All that was left was this tall periscope with eyes. We went closer to it, only for it to disappear in the ground. For Jerry's troubles, I decided that I was not going to smoke for a long while, and gave Jerry my other blunt. He thanked me, and we headed our separate ways, and thus was the end of the character arc of Jerry. So now I'm here telling you guys the rest of my thoughts, now that the weed wore off. I have trauma now from Nicolas Cage. I will never ever watch any movie he stars in again. It felt like something was living in that cartridge. Was it really him? I think Nick has something to do with this, but I don't know what. And if I could get a hold of the shady-looking man, then I would be able to find some answers and lay my head to rest. Rest in peace, author's head. The idea to record only came to me towards the end, so you could see the last few minutes of what I saw, the easiest parts for me to edit myself, uploaded on the Silva Gunner channel. I'm going to stay on the channel for a little while longer before I fall asleep to upload the footage of what I recorded, or look at the comments for theories to help me shed some light into this. I am not going to be taking suggestions on what to do next. Boy, don't you sound nice, author. I will not be continuing to play this cursed game. I will burn it tomorrow morning in a bonfire. I will not let the voice or face of Nicolas Cage haunt me anymore. It was already burnt, so maybe someone already tried. Well, they didn't try very hard because now you have it. But I will burn it until it is nothing but ash in front of my very own eyes. That's the end of the rip. I'm hoping that maybe this is some kind of intentional ROM hack a fucked up teenager made. It definitely is, but go on. Or maybe this cartridge really does contain the essence of Nicolas Cage. Whatever it is, I hope that I can continue to keep my face ... on. And that was Nick Burned. And honestly, I'm not even really sure what happened. So the author got a broken cartridge that was apparently haunted by Nicolas Cage or something, and then his face was burned? I'm not really sure. I zoned out midway through, but yes, that was bullshit creepypasta story time. Thank you for watching.